have, let me see. Looks like we have all of our committee members on here, so I certainly appreciate you joining us this evening, and thank you to the board members who are jumping on to listen as well. Um, so we're going to start again, pick up with our 5000 series. We left off with policy 51442.2, which was use of exclusionary timeout. Hopefully everybody has had ample time to review the information that Kelly sent out. And Kelly, I just want to thank you for getting this information to us just about a week before the meeting. It makes it a lot easier to go through all of the policies and really take a good look at them before we sit down to talk about them together. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Did you want to
So
start?
I will take it from here. The use of exclusionary timeout, just as a reminder to everyone, we did review this policy at the last committee meeting. We had a pretty extensive discussion regarding other policies, and I think got to the end and we decided to postpone this one so everyone would have a chance to review, read it more thoroughly, and then ask any follow-up questions. So I will go ahead and post it on the screen, but I think really my ask would be if there's any questions after people have had the chance to review it, we could answer them now. We did, if I don't know if there's questions, but I could also just do a brief overview if that would be helpful.
Kelly, could you just zoom in a little bit on that screen so
course.
it's a little larger for us? Thank you.
Better?
Yes, thank you.
So Kelly, I just had a couple of questions, but I'd rather wait just in case people need to go back and review.
Mhm. Do you want me to do another high-level overview of the policy, or do we want to go directly to the questions?
Committee members, any position on that?
You could do a quick overview or. Yes.
Sure. So this policy is all about the use of exclusionary timeouts. It applies to situations in which we need to intentionally remove a student from a learning environment as a proactive measure to de-escalate behavior so that we preserve their dignity in the moment if a child is having a difficulty, and also preserve the learning environment for other students so we don't have an extremely behaviorally disruptive student that might be interfering with the learning of others. The importance of this policy is really talking about when to do it, that it needs to be done not as a punishment or punitive, and that we need to make all efforts to, as quickly as possible, return the student to the learning environment so they can continue with their peers. And that is really the essence of this policy.
Thank you.
Juanita, did you want to move forward with questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So Kelly, my first question is, in reading the policy, is it just for special needs students?
That's an excellent question.
Care for?
I would say the preponderance of the times in which this is applied is for students with special needs. However, it could also apply to a non-identified student.
Okay. Somewhere in there, I'm sorry, I don't have it pulled up.
That's okay.
We talked about students who have behavior plans.
Yes.
And so just for clarification, that behavior plan could be in the form of a 504 or an IEP. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Could it also be just generated in general for a student who's that's not identified,
Yep.
but having issues.
That is
behavior.
correct. So a general behavior plan can be put in place for any student. So you could have, a kindergarten teacher, for example, that realizes that a student is having difficulty with maybe calling out in the middle of class, and they could devise some strategies that are in written form. Behavior plan really refers to anything in written form. A BIP, which is a behavior intervention plan, typically applies only to students with IEPs or 504s, but a general behavior plan could apply to anyone in the school setting.
Okay. Can I keep going?
Of course.
Mhm.
Okay. So when we go down to number 3,
Under this heading
Where
right
is it?
here, Juanita?
time limitations for the
Yes,
use?
right
Okay.
here.
And then if we go down to paragraph number 5, I think it is 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
5. Hmm.
The one that begins school administration.
Okay, I was looking for the one that had like parentheses when it talked about not exceeding 30 minutes. Where
Right here.
is it school administration?
The first paragraph.
The first paragraph has a
Okay,
reference.
sorry, first paragraph first. So when we have our parentheses, I mean, I understand it, and it says a suggested time legislation does not specify time limits. This going back a little bit, the time should normally not exceed 30 minutes. I'm thinking that in the parentheses, to make it a little bit clearer,
Mhm.
this is a suggested time legislation referring specifically to the 30 minutes.
So instead of just saying a suggested, changing the word a to this is a.
Right.
I think that provides some clarity in my opinion.
Okay.
I'll put it in there to see what people think.
I agree to that.
Okay, so that was the first paragraph. And so then if I go down to the paragraph that begins with hold on. Okay, I'll just tell you what the paragraph talked about.
Sure.
It talked about the school administration or school administrator or other personnel, it says. Right, there it is. So
Mhm.
school administration or other personnel shall be notified in the event. Okay, so after the word other,
Mhm.
school administration or other designated personnel.
Yes, the intent of this, it would be, for example, if the principal was not there and someone was the acting administrator, so we could say, or the administrative designee or other designated personnel, that would be appropriate.
Okay.
I-
Yeah, well, because sometimes even on our behavioral plan or our IEP, we may have the services of an individual and we may have to call in someone else because the person is absent or and so yeah, they're still a designee.
So here, I'm just trying to highlight what we added or changed. Inserting the word designated, I think, is getting at.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. Are there any
I
other
had a
questions?
quick question. I had a
Yeah,
question there.
sure.
So at the same sentence, we have timeout setting for an excessive amounts of time. What does that exactly mean?
That ties back to the first paragraph in this section, which is telling us that 30 minutes or under should be the recommended guideline for this. So if for some reason we had a circumstance in which it needed to go in excess of 30 minutes, then we want to reach out to the administrator or designated administrative designee to have conversations and make sure that there's not another strategy, another intervention, a support that could be put in place.
Thank you.
Okay. Feedback from other committee members? Okay. Any feedback from Sherry? Looks like you were trying to say something. I'm not sure.
Oh, this is going back, general behavior, when you were saying the word general, and you're saying most of the time this is for special needs, but does general mean, and then you were saying 504 IEP, but does general just basically mean everybody?
Sure. So, sorry, thank you for the clarifying question. General would be referred to general education students. So that is typically someone that is not identified as a child with an IEP or a special education student. It could include a student with a 504. Those are accommodation plans that students have, where an IEP or a special education program is services that a student is legally entitled to, along with accommodations.
Okay. Thank you.
Just an extension on the same question. So it's just can mean a student just having a difficult day.
This is intended to apply to any student within the school population, really making sure that no child is excluded or removed without an appropriate plan in place and strategies to immediately return that child to their learning environment. So I could give you an example of maybe a time in which it would apply to a student that is not identified with an IEP or a 504 plan, which typically we may expect a behavioral support plan or strategy plan to be in place for students that have additional needs. But we could have a student that experienced something challenging over the weekend, a loss of a pet, be crying in the middle of the classroom, and this plan would allow us to remove that child for a short period of time to meet with someone, to regroup, maybe to reach out to a parent, and then return them to the learning environment. But really the parameters here are bringing a very conscious awareness that anytime we do that, the goal needs to be to get that student back as quickly as possible, as is reasonable given the age, the circumstance, the grade level, and so forth.
And I'm glad that we made it clear that it's not a punitive strategy. So it is, to me, it was very clear that we were looking at the needs of the student at the time in the situation.
Yes. And again, in an ideal world, we would not want to have disruptions, but the reality is there are different circumstances that come about at different points throughout the day or in students' lives. And this allows us to be proactive and respond to that in a supportive measure.
Okay. Last call for any questions. In that case, I'm looking for a motion to recommend updated CABE policy 5144.2, use of exclusionary timeout, to the board for first read. Is there a motion, please?
Motion made.
Thank you, Juanita. And a second, please?
Second.
Is that Minnie or Sherry? Sorry.
Yes. Minnie, yes.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Go right ahead, Kelly.
Okay. So the next policy that you're going to see, and just give me a moment to scroll to it on the screen, is promotion, acceleration, and retention. So this policy is really all about the process in which we want to make sure that students have achieved of a certain standard, and that we follow notification processes and procedures and considerations if we are ever to keep a student or retain a student in a grade level. So this is referring to the fact that, just to bring some highlights here, in order to receive, for example, a high school diploma, there are particular credit requirements and grade expectations for passing in order to be awarded that certificate. There will be a later policy this evening on graduation that's a little bit more explicit. It also talks about taking into consideration academic achievement, social and emotional maturity, particularly in instances in which a student is not achieving maybe where we would expect them to, and there may be a consideration that it may be in that student's best interest to be retained in a grade level. I do want to share that retentions, and certainly Dr. Casimiro, if you'd like to chime in, I invite you, but retentions are considered very few and far between. We do want to make sure that students are promoted with their grade level peers, but there are circumstances in which it is advantageous to a student, particularly when we're looking at the younger grade levels, in which we may consider it for them, and we need to involve parents as well as the educators that are working with that student to look at the advantages and disadvantages to then make an individualized decision for that student.
Thanks, Kelly. This is a more of a rare occurrence in our district, ever more so now than even in the past when I think Kelly and I both started teaching. We do not retain students without really a serious review and look at their what's beneficial for the student long term. And takes into account a variety of factors related to the student. And oftentimes, those are kind of longstanding issues. So thank you, Kelly. You explained it very, very eloquently.
Thank you. It also, sorry, one other point to highlight in here, it also talks about when a student is having difficulty, it's not just how, it is a consideration of, are there additional supports during the school day, additional personnel to work with, possibly summer school participation, after hours tutoring support, a variety of different things that we can do to support that student so that they are able to achieve academically. So that is the essence of this policy. I do want to highlight as well, there's a notation here, which is not required to be part of this policy, but we can decide to keep it in here. It is a regulation that we follow anyways. And this is talking about Danbury as a priority school district is required to also evaluate the reading achievement of students. And for students K-3 that are not meeting the grade level expectation, we offer additional supports and services during the school day, but also the benefit of participating in a summer school as a means to boost that achievement. For those of you, the reading research around reading achievement for students really focuses on making sure that to the greatest extent possible, students are on or close to grade level by grade 3, as that is really the pivotal moment from where we go from like learning to read to reading to learn, meaning that you have to obtain reading skills in order to be able to study at the higher grade levels, the content, like think science and social studies, which has a lot more intense and academic language. And so this really just spells out our legal obligations under current Connecticut state statutes to offer that summer school programming K-3 for anyone that's not achieving at that benchmark. There is, and again, these are the CABE policies. There is one sentence, and it's repeated 2 times, that I'm going to just bring your attention to. And it's here at the end, and it, like I said, it's in 2 different paragraphs. It essentially says that if a student does not participate in that summer school offering, he or she shall not be promoted to the next grade level. I would recommend that we change that language to may not. There are a number of different circumstances in which students, may or may not be able to participate in that summer school programming. And I do not think that we should be just blanket, keeping students back. There are a number of different family circumstances. And so I look at the offering of that summer school as an extra added opportunity for learning. But we really are not in practice retaining students from just a simple, you did not participate. And I know the shall not is language that some people will interpret differently, but I would recommend we're more explicitly that they may be considered for not moving forward, but that it's not a definite.
I agree, Kelly.
I agree. Yeah. Thanks, Kelly.
Same.
There's one other section here. Again, CADE recommended policy. It does say March 15th that we have all consideration of retention. We typically do this by early May. So what I would recommend, and we're starting conversations certainly February, March, but I would also recommend that this language and wording be changed to May by May 15th. That's, solidly a month before the end of the school year in most years, as well as summer, but that gives us a little bit more time. March is early, and it would allow us to have some additional data to see where that student really is at the end of the year, particularly when we're talking about our little youngsters or K-1 students. The amount of progress a student can make between February and May can be remarkable, particularly when you're talking about reading gains. So I would also update that. Again, we can make decisions earlier, but this is intended as like the hard, fast stop date for that.
May I ask a question here, Kelly?
Absolutely.
The sentence there reads, parents will be notified as early as possible, and with few exceptions, no later than March 15th. That's not a hard and fast that the child is going to be retained. It's just a notification to parents.
Correct.
Is it safe to assume that there are other communications that are going to be happening between the teacher or other personnel in the educators in the building and the parent prior to that, around this issue? And so it's a formality almost to put it into the policy this way?
Yeah, so I would say typically no later than February, we're engaging. So January is mid-year benchmark assessments where we're seeing where a student is in the middle of the year. Usually in February and March, these conversations start with parents. And then really it would just give us the decision making. And I'm not saying to delay notification to parents, but a final decision. And we might want to even specify the language a little bit differently. As I'm rereading it and I'm like, you're right. We could still make a decision after March 15th. We just want to make sure to have parents be in the loop, but also give some latitude that we're not making a premature decision for some students.
And can you remind me, please, when parent-teacher conferences are happening in
Typically
relation to
in
this?
November is the first conference, and then again in the springtime after this March date.
Thank you.
The second conference is after the March 15 date, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the parents are notified before that.
Yeah, anytime we're engaging in a decision, this is really around that retention. As Dr. Casimiro indicated, you're talking about a very small population of students that this applies to. And many times parents could be initiating this conversation with us that they may feel for some reason or another that their child would benefit. So it's an ongoing collaborative discussion. It is not a one and done type thing. Typically after we see where the student is at mid-year, if there are significant concerns, we start to talk about additional strategies and interventions, and then we monitor how they're doing. And then, could we possibly consider this in the future? But it is an ongoing discussion back and forth with parents.
And do the supports kick in also
Yes.
along with this? Okay.
Yes. We can come back to this. The last thing I just wanted to indicate with this policy is at the very end, there's alternative language to consider. In my opinion, and certainly open it up to the discussion of the group, the alternative language is much broader and wider than the language that we read previously within the policy. And I do think that the language in the policy is a little bit more explicit in the prior to where it says alternative language, and I would recommend going with the more explicit language for this policy.
And not the alternative language.
Correct. So removing the alternative language and going with the rest of the policy.
Okay, because in the alternative language, it does say the decision to promote the student to the next grade shall be determined by completion of the curriculum, attendance, and so forth. And there may be situations where a student may not have totally completed
I agree
the
with you.
I do like the idea of the established system of grading and reporting, but I'm assuming that we already have that in place.
We do, and there's actually a policy that you'll also review later that talks a little bit more extensively, and that's why they're kind of together tonight. Graduation, credit attainment, promotion, and then reporting to parents.
According to parents. Mhm.
So I would recommend, and again, this is completely up for conversation, that we strike through this language. And I would also recommend the potential of changing this March 15th and expanding it a little bit to give some additional time. If we wanted to say May 1st, but I would give a little bit more time to do that.
It's a little interesting to me that there is a similar sentence to the one that Juanita just parsed out above that doesn't specify quite as many criteria.
Okay, take into consideration, right?
Yeah, the decision to promote a student shall be based on the successful completion of the curriculum, attendance, performance on the statewide mastery assessment, testing program, other standardized tests, meeting the statewide reading standards in the primary grades, maturity, academic potential, and student aptitude. Whereas above it reads, a modified version of that, the decision to promote a student to the next grade level should be based on demonstrated and assessed successful completion of the curriculum, attendance, performance on the statewide mastery tests, mastery assessments, and other testing instruments.
Mhm.
I don't know how others feel about it, but I almost prefer the second version of that sentence down in the alternative language, pulling out that particular sentence and replacing the one above. I think it's a little bit more comprehensive.
So removing, if I'm just understanding, removing the sentence I have highlighted and replacing it with the sentence from below, which has a little bit more expansive.
A little more meat to it, yeah.
No, sorry, I'll go back down here.
Committee
Thank
members,
you.
are you amenable to that?
Yes.
I'm
Seeing
gonna put it
some
up
head
here just so
nodding.
you can see it side by side. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
So we would insert that sentence and then, sorry, and strike through that one.
I think that also offers some flexibility to administration about evaluating students, especially in the lower grades where maybe there is, a maturity issue or something that is impeding academic progress. And does that look okay to everybody?
I like it.
Thank you.
Are we
All right.
okay? Oh, I'm sorry, Kate. Oh, are we okay
I-
with striking out this section on the alternate language?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're looking for a date of no later than May 15th. Is that correct?
Yeah, even if we did April 15th, we could be flexible, and I think just a little bit more room would be helpful.
Kate, may
Or
I
may
ask a
also-
question?
Yes, go ahead,
May.
Sean.
May is good.
Through you, Kate. Kelly, is that alignment with the start of the fourth barking period? Is that why you want to do it? I mean, I'm all for
Yes.
it as a former teacher.
Yes, it does coincide with the end of the third quarter, start of the fourth.
Right. I think it's a great idea.
I think there's an additional benefit there in that giving it a little bit more room, maybe a little bit less cause for concern on the part of parents who are getting notified, months in advance of a decision actually being made. That can create a lot of anxiety.
Do we want to do April? That gives us a little bit more time, but not too long.
Gladys, did you have a question or a comment?
I just want to say Kelly has made a super recommendation for all area of this that we are looking at. And I think we need to move forward on it instead of, we change things, a lot of things to our liking, but I think she's made excellent recommendation for us to accept, and we need to move on.
I have one other question.
Go ahead, Juanita.
So down in the alternative language, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to pull this up. So the last sentence, I think many had addressed this, the administration, in the event of a retention, the administration shall determine a remedial assistance for the student. Is that up in the other document as the next step of a retained student?
I'm just confirming, Juanita. I don't recall
Okay.
that exact sentence, but give me 1 second.
I know many had asked, so does support kick in place automatically?
There
Everything.
is a reference to any student that is in danger of being retained and a consideration of multiple opportunities. It reads, opportunities provided for supplemental and remedial instruction to assist the student in overcoming academic deficiencies, which may include but are not limited to, and then goes on to list a bunch of different strategies that could be. So it's not that exact sentence, but I think the essence of it, and probably a little bit more detailed.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Just want to make sure we have that language there.
It is there.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Kelly, could you pull up the last that you highlighted in yellow almost at the end?
The date, Ms. Cooper, or the earlier part?
At the bottom.
Right here.
Uh-huh.
This right here? Or, I'm sorry, or the last sentence.
No, the last one.
I apologize.
Uh-huh.
It reads, the administration shall determine remedial assistance for a student who is not promoted. And the question was, is that included earlier? While that exact sentence is not verbatim included earlier, I believe it to read to be even more detailed, to include not only should we provide them with remedial assistance, but listing some considerations like summer programming, after school tutoring, support during the day.
Okay. Because I have read through it before. Thank you.
Of course.
Is there any other feedback on this policy? All right, seeing none, I will call for a motion to recommend CABE policy 5123, promotion, acceleration, retention, to the board for a first read. Is there a motion for that, please?
Motion.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there a second, please?
A second? Yes.
Thank you very much, Minnie. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion so carries. Thank you. All right.
The
Moving on.
next policy is 5123.3, graduation ceremonies participation. This policy, in its essence, really talks about the ability of how students can participate, not achieve graduation, but participate in the ceremony or the graduation ceremony that we offer. And it really talks about students should have completed their graduation requirements or be very close, like in their final semester, with a plan to complete them very soon in order to be able to participate. What that means is that we actively monitor as the end of the school year comes to make sure that that students are in fact meeting all their credit requirements for graduation. And if a student does not, then they are not to participate in that ceremony. The exception to that would be sometimes we notice a student would be, let's say, one class shy, and they have an extensive plan to make that up in our summer school programming. We allow them to walk and participate in the graduation that occurs one time a year in June. And then they would finish up their credit requirements, and upon completion, we would then award the diploma. There are a couple other, and that's under, it also allows for, and I'm not aware of using this very frequently, but again, in the CABE recommended policy, if we had a foreign exchange student, for example, that may not be accepting our diploma, but here in their senior year, we could give consideration for that. And then number 3 really refers to other exceptional circumstances. And I will give you an instance, or for example, with our students with special needs, we often have students that have obtained their credit requirements for graduation, their 25 credits for graduation, but there's a provision under special education law that says if you still need support with transition programming, so that's vocational skills, post-secondary readiness, independent or life skills, that you may continue on if you are a student with a more significant disability and you need additional support in those areas. What we allow students to do in that circumstance, though, is to walk with their class. They do not get an official diploma. They come back to us in the fall, and then when they're done with their programming, we award the official diploma. So that just allows kind of that unique circumstance. I would say we have a handful of students every year that fall into that category. Between our 2 vocational programs, we're currently servicing about 40 students that are eligible, let's say, for their diploma, but still need some additional support in that area and may stay on for an additional 1, 2, or sometimes even 3 years.
Kelly,
In
it
the-
looks like
Sorry, go
oh,
ahead. I
sorry.
apologize.
Just a point of clarification on that. On the previously passed policy from 2000, it looks like there is a specific numbered item that covers students in special education classes.
Mhm.
Is that, so that is like a much more deliberate language, but
Mhm.
it would be covered under this other category, which might be more broadly applied if we needed it.
Correct.
Thank you.
The other pieces to this policy is there is another version. I would, again, my opinion on this is I would not recommend doing the other version. However, in place of what we read all the way up until here. For example, these 2 first paragraphs are, in my opinion, spelled out much more detailed up above. But the rest of this section talks about behavior conduct. It talks about, and for example, if we have a significant circumstance in which there is a behavioral disciplinary matter, students may not be able to participate. It really specifies that this is a privilege, and you need to meet our district and board policies in order to do that. It also talks about the superintendent and ultimately high school principal selecting your valedictorian, salutatorian. And then lastly, that the superintendent has the right to talk about, to give any awards or honors or recognitions in the ceremony, in the graduation ceremony. So for those of you that have participated in the past, for example, you may see cords that students are wearing that are representative of different levels of achievement. And this policy really designates the superintendent as the person that can determine which of those awards and achievements should be recognized in the graduation ceremony. So I would not recommend these first two paragraphs, but the rest of this, another version, I would just tack on to the earlier policy, including the limitations section. In this limitations section, it has 6 pieces to it. It really talks about preserving that this is a celebratory event, and that it can't be, that event can't be diminished or interrupted in any way. It's a privilege. That if you do not meet our code of conduct, you may be asked not to participate in that. Again, not something that happens very often, but we have had an occasion, a unique circumstance that has warranted that decision to be made. That we're looking for cooperation from our staff and administration in the senior activities which lead up to graduation. It is a huge production with lots of practices, distributing even caps and gowns to students and all the celebratory events that go into it, that we recognize and are committed to doing those. And then lastly, which I do think is an important one, the last one is number 6, or I'm sorry, 5 and 6, proper attire, right? We have a cap and gown that students are expected to wear. We want to make sure that that ceremony, is presentable, and that acknowledges that we expect a proper attire. And then lastly, that school property must be returned. These would like the old book fees, but there are, if you have a district issued laptop and all those kind of things, this is our attempt to collect back any DPS property that is property of the district and should not leave with the graduate.
Questions from committee members? Okay, Kelly, I'm sorry, I have a few.
Sure.
I was looking at these, this compared to the previous version of it. And there are a few things that are spelled out in there that are not spelled out in this other version of the policy that I don't know if we added in or how that all works. But the first one is that it specifies in the old policy that the superintendent shall establish the date for graduation exercises and shall inform the Board of Education no later than the first regular meeting held in April. I think that is worth holding on to.
I don't disagree with you. And that is, I believe that is something that we have always done. It is also part of legislation with our calendar, but I think it's nice to include in the policy.
Yep. Any concern from committee members about adding that to the new to adopt policy? No. Okay.
No concern.
There are a couple other things too. It does specify point number 4 on the old policy in the graduation ceremonies, present and former members of the Board of Education and the high school principal will be the authorized individuals to present diplomas to the graduates. I know that is standard practice, but I think we should also include that in the policy.
I think it makes sense too. It's been a longstanding practice in district. I'm just trying to pull up the old policy so we can actually just look at the language together.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I know it's small. Give me a second. So the first thing you mentioned, Kate, is this first number 1 from our old policy. And then, sorry, I'm looking for where you had the other one.
Number 4.
Number 4, thank you.
The last thing on there that I just wanted to bring forward, and again, I don't know if this is existing, practice or I think it does help to spell this out. If you look at number 5, it does talk about, if the student doesn't meet the requirements, the student is denied the opportunity to participate in graduation. However, the student is still eligible to participate in all senior class activities. So I don't know that we need to necessarily include all of that content since it's a lot of it is covered in the previous, the new version that we're looking to adopt. But I do think that sentence, if that is our practice, to allow students to participate in senior class activities regardless of graduation status. We should include that, I think, in this policy as well.
And I think I would just clarify, is this someone that has achieved senior status and standing? And then the only caveat would be if there was for example, a disciplinary infraction, they could lose the privilege. So I would just want to consider that. We could also say at the discretion of, for example, high school administration or something like that. So there's a consideration that would allow, kind of based on situation, if we felt that that was more amenable to be able to enforce where appropriate and then restrict where appropriate.
I agree.
Whatever we add should be in alignment with what your practices are now.
Right.
I would say that that is in line. So the high school principal would be in the best position to know the circumstances around why a student may not be eligible to walk in the graduation, but may otherwise participate in senior activities.
I agree, Kara.
So what would that language look like in the policy? Are you thinking we would pull this existing language over, or are you thinking we would modify it?
What if we were to say, however, the student may be eligible to participate in all senior class activities at the discretion of the high school principal or designee?
I would change all to other, perhaps.
Other? Yep.
Committee, how does that sound to you?
That's good. So
That
then
sounds
they
good.
can
Yep.
pick and choose is what you're saying. You're not, yes, that makes sense.
It puts the authority and the responsibility in the hands of the principal, which is
Right.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yep.
I am taking notes. I will type it up into there. It's just harder to do because they're larger sections of language. There is one other part that I do want to just call our attention to. Just give me 1 second. It's not allowing me to share my screen without unsharing and then clicking through. So there is one other section that I do want to just call that I do want to make a proposed change to. This right here again. This paragraph right here talks about the school administration must notify parents or guardians if a child is not able to participate. It is important that parents know ongoing whether or not a student is on track. So the intent of this is at the close of the first half of the school year, if it is not possible for a student to obtain their diploma, of course, parents and guardians must be informed. In most circumstances, they are well aware of that beforehand, but this really comes down to maybe when a student needed an additional credit or half credit, to get the diploma. Here, though, what I feel like it doesn't recognize that was in our previous policy is we are notifying in that second semester up until about a week before graduation on whether or not students have successfully completed. And so I really think that this language right here should actually read that parents or guardians should be notified. I would take out the certified mail because when you're talking about a week before graduation, if you have a student, I'll use an example that has to, you know, all students have to take 4 years of English. If they do not pass that second semester of English, they are then going to be notified that you do not meet the high school graduation requirements. And so I really, yes, I want to preserve that we're doing it ongoing, but that hard, fast drop date is typically the week before graduation. And I think it's important to reflect that in this policy. So I would recommend that we say parents or guardians are notified no later than 1 week prior to graduation, whether or not they will successfully obtain their high school diploma. If we wanted to add in and ongoing before that, that is totally fine, because that's an important part of the communication process. But we cannot guarantee for sure at the close of semester 1 that a child is going to remain on track at the end of the second semester.
So are you saying that you're going to tell them as early as possible?
As early as possible,
So
but
that-
it could be as late as a week before graduation.
But they will get notified early, and then it's up to them if they're going to do something about it, whether they go to a summer school or somehow make it up. Okay, so they're notified with plenty of time.
They are notified, yes, at the close of every single semester, students are aware of how many credits they work on towards graduation. Ms. Harris, I'm looking at you. School counselors, as a former school counselor, meet with them very regularly. They know, trust me, students know, parents know, I can assure you of that. We are even working on an improvement to our online platform to even show status and bars of like, look, you completed all your English. Oh, you need more art. You need a music class
Yeah,
to help
wow.
with build that capacity. But this is not a secret to any student or family. But I just feel like we need to reflect that unfortunately, there are situations in which a child is on track and, oh my gosh, they don't pass 2 classes. That senioritis, so to speak, creeps in on them. And then we sometimes have to make those calls to families leading up to graduation, which is very hard to do. Of course, we work with them. We give them plenty of warning and lots of opportunities, and we are as much invested in their completion as they are. But there are circumstances in which it does come down to the wire, for lack of better terms.
Right.
And part of what we do with policies is to make sure that we're as explicit as we can be, because sometimes these questions will come forward from families or from parents or from students. And having a specific area of a policy to point to and say, hey, this is how things are supposed to work and this is what we're permitted,
Right.
to do and how we're permitted to operate, it can be helpful in diffusing difficult conversations.
Yes. Understood.
I'm trying to do this on the fly, but shall be notified ongoing and no later than 1 week prior to scheduled graduation activities. I think communicates we'll let you know throughout the process, but that hard, fast 1 week before is important.
Yes.
Yeah, like the language it says ongoing that's a good thing. Needs to be.
So it would read the entire policy as is here. We would add in number 1, number 4, and a revised number 5 from the previous policy, which talks about the superintendent establishing the date, present and former Board of Ed members participating in the distribution of the diplomas, and then the senior class activities was number 5. We would then make this small language change here, which would be reflective of our current practices, and then continue on to really talk about the details of, any designees, recognition of valedictorian, salutatorian, and then the provision if there was any need to maybe remove someone due to conduct or behavioral issues.
Committee members, any other questions about this policy? Non-committee members, any questions? All right, seeing none, I will look for a motion to recommend updated CABE policy 5123.3 graduation ceremonies participation to the board for a first read. Is there a motion on the floor?
Motion.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there a second to that motion, please?
I second it.
Was that Minnie?
Yes.
Thank you, Minnie. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion so carries. All right, Kelly, go right ahead.
And what I will do, just to note on that policy, I will go over the language changes with Dan and Meg. If for some reason there's questions or a point of clarification, I would ask the committee to consider those. But I just because that policy in particular really applies to the high school.
Thank you.
Yep, of course. Okay. The next is reporting to parents, and I believe this came up, Ms. Harris, you asked before. This really ties to the policies we've spoken about to date, but particularly the promotion, acceleration, and retention policy, as well as how do you know if you met your high school graduation requirements and you're eligible to participate. This really breaks down into two particular areas in this policy of reporting to parents. Of course, we want to encourage that ongoing two-way communication between teachers and parents. And by teachers, we mean any adult in the school setting that's working with a student. And that we should have that regular and ongoing communication. But this policy is intended to spell out two specific times in which it is absolutely required. The first being report cards, and that they will be issued in accordance with a schedule as approved by our superintendent of schools, and in consultation with principals and faculty, meaning that all of our schools send out the same number of report cards by level. So currently at the elementary level, you have 3 report cards, where at the secondary level, you have 4. So one operates on a trimester, the other operates on a quarter basis. And it talks about the particular areas. We want report cards to reflect educational growth of students in relationship to their ability, attitudes, interests, conduct, citizenship, achievement, and how they relate to the standards for a child in his or her age or grade level. So really talking about that we have a common way of communicating with students, and in our district, the report cards, regardless of the elementary school in which you go to, you will get a common report card that has the same ratings, and that's very important to us. We are always looking to improve and revise, and I know our superintendent has that in the future plans to continue to take a look at some of our report card methods and make revisions. And of course, the Board of Ed would be made aware of those. But this really standardized that parents can expect to hear from us on a regular basis based on the level in which they attend school. The second piece is this warning notices, right? So it's one thing when you're notified on a regular basis. But this goes into if a student is not achieving where we would expect them to be. This links directly into how does a parent know if a child is going to be recommended for summer school or whatever it might be, that we are talking to them and letting them know when that child's progress falls below grade level expectations. And then the last piece of this policy, this last paragraph here, and this does come up from time to time on questioning. This would be in situations in which there are 2 parents that you may have a child living with one parent, but the other parent still has any legal decision-making authority over that child, even though they're not living with them. This lets our families know that if you are a parent that has rights and access to your kid's information, you're going to get a copy of these notices, whether or not your child lives with you or not. The only exception to this would be, and that's what that word non-custodial means, not living with them at a particular point in time. And the only exception to this would be is if we have a legal document, a court order, a divorce decree, something like that, that says, for example, this parent has exclusive decision-making authority and is the only one to receive information from the school, then we would update our records. But minus that, it really does, if you are the legal parent or guardian, we're going to tell you how your kid is doing, regardless of which parent they are currently residing with.
Thank you, Kelly. Questions from the committee? I have a couple small questions.
Sure.
Under number 1, report card, written reports on student progress. I understand why they use that language, but given that we don't really use written report cards anymore, I just wonder if we should revise that word.
What,
We type them, we send them
computerized?
electronically, yeah.
Electronic report cards?
Do we deliver them electronically or are they delivered on paper still?
Most cases, they are delivered electronically.
Okay.
You could just say reports on student progress. You could just remove the,
It's a silly thing.
no, it's,
No, it's not. It's very real.
or you could do the and or, written and or electronic to cover either situation.
let's do the and or. I think that makes sense.
I could
Is that
type.
agreeable to the committee?
Yes. I do have a question about the first paragraph, reporting to parents and effective two-way communication.
Yep.
And the various reporting methods. Aren't they also reporting electronically through Parent Square, or there's communication back and forth? So I know it's varied reporting methods, but since we're putting the electronic down there, parent portal, school portals, that we might.
Can I make a suggestion? I'm wondering if next to varied, do we write, I would even say sometimes we're doing it in person, right? Sometimes we're having a sit down meeting, in person, electronic or written, and that might cover all of the circumstances. Maybe I'm missing one. I don't know.
No,
I
Good.
agree. Yeah.
So, in person. How does that look?
Mhm.
Very nice.
Yeah, that looks better.
Mhm.
Does it read better if I throw this at the end of the sentence? I'm wondering. It's kind of choppy.
Okay. Mhm.
Kelly, I have another question under the warning notices section. That last sentence in particular, non-custodial parents shall receive written reports and conference notifications upon a request to the school principal. Is it standard practice to automatically include non-custodial parents, or did I misunderstand something?
Yeah, it is standard practice to include them unless there is a situation that prevents them.
Okay. So does it make sense for us to say upon a request to the school principal if they're being included regardless?
It's,
That's what I thought. That's what
it's not needed. Yeah. So striking this through.
I hear that.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions about this policy?
Where I think that we're making the assumption that custodial and non-custodial parents are supplying us the information, send out reporting. Oftentimes we don't have that information until the non-custodial parent comes forward and says, I'd like to have some information on my child also. Sometimes that information isn't forthcoming if one of the parents are registering or So I'm not sure, are we putting ourselves in a situation that we now have to have that information? That we're responsible. Non-custodial parents shall receive written reports and conference notifications.
Juanita, you raise a very good point because again, when that the assumption is when we have that information, of course, we wouldn't keep
We
it.
do. That's
Yes,
right. We
there.
do.
And I think and so Kate, when you made the suggestion, I was like, yes, absolutely. But I think you raise a very good point is if we don't have the information or know where that non-custodial parent is or how to get in touch with them, we may not be able to do so until. So we could say, when the district has the proper contact information of a non-custodial parent, they will receive this. And in circumstances where we do not, it'll be received upon written request for the school principal.
So what if in this language here, we say non-custodial parents who provide contact
info.
information shall receive
Right.
written reports and conference notifications.
Or we could say when the district,
When-
when the district has proper contact information, a non-custodial parent will receive written reports and conference notifications. Or we could leave the
Or
original language.
when non-custodial parents provide contact information. Provide contact information, the district shall, or
As long as the district
the
has
school
the,
shall supply. They shall receive, yeah.
That makes sense. Huh?
That was a good point, Juanita.
Yeah, very good.
I'm going to highlight the whole sentence because I've done, I think, a complete language alteration.
Yes.
I'm wondering if that we received.
We don't have to reiterate from the sentence before where it says unless there is an order from the court to the contrary, right? That just carries.
Carries over.
Yeah, I think it carries over. And that is
carries
law.
over. That yes, it carries over.
The reason why I changed it is it felt like the onus was on the non-custodial parent. And sometimes we receive orders in which the custodial parent, that was the one that registered them, is the one that is obligated to provide both contact information. And so I just think this puts it just out there of when we have the proper information, we will reach out.
Mhm.
Any other questions from committee members?
Kelly, could you just go over the highlighted part? Could you reread it again, please?
Sure, it says,
Yes, thank you.
yeah, it says when the district has received contact information, the non-custodial parents shall receive written reports and conference notifications.
Okay. Thank you.
last call. Any questions on this policy? All right. In that case, I'm looking for a motion to recommend CABE policy 5124, reporting to parents to the board for a first read.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Juanita. Is there a second on that motion, please?
A
Second.
Oops, sorry, go ahead, Minnie.
Okay, we'll give that to Minnie. All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we've got two policies left.
Okay, the next one is policy 5145.12, and it's search and seizure. Essentially, the essence of this policy is talking about a school administrator's ability to conduct a search and potentially obtain an item that is not permitted in school. And so the language to me sounds very law enforcement-y, but this is really talking about our ability of the school administration, who is, the acting official and kind of local parentis when the student is at school. And it is under very specific circumstances. So you will see here, there's really 3 times that this is permissible. You have to have reasonable suspicion. So we can't just go rummaging through kids' lockers or desks or whatnot just because we feel like it. There has to be a reason. It has to be reasonable in scope, meaning that, if we're told that a student has something in their backpack, we might be searching their backpack and their person, asking if they have anything in their pockets, but we're not going to go all out and search the entire school. And the reason that we're doing it is that there's an emergency or dangerous situation. So, for example, the two probably more common, times in which it is absolutely essential would be as if there is a contraband item, could be anything from, drugs, alcohol, things like that are not allowed in school. Or it could be, if it's dangerous, could be something like a weapon. And this really allows us to take the matter into our hand. This is all about making sure that the larger school community, right? We would not be doing our job if we heard that a student had an item that was not okay for school that could cause, serious bodily injury or harm to another individual, student or adult, if we did not follow through on this. So this really talks about, yes, we have, if there is reasonable suspicion, our administrators are allowed to conduct the search. And that could be anything on, that could be items that they've brought to school, a backpack, it could be a locker, it could be a desk, so on and so forth, to make sure that we're maintaining the safety and security for the larger school community. There is an alternative language section here, and I'll just call it out before we go into discussion. Again, this is CABE recommended as something to consider regarding strip searches. That is not something that we are recommending to be considered in this policy. That is not something that is in current practice and would not be a section of this policy that we feel is needed.
Okay, questions from the committee?
Sherry, I think you're talking, but I cannot hear you.
District official, that means any teacher, any principal, anyone, another student. If
No,
if they're suspicious of another student, they go to a official and then it goes into their hands, or
So a district official is meant to refer to someone that is operating under their administrative certification. So an 092 certification, that they have a responsibility to look into a circumstance. So it would not apply to a teacher taking this matter into their hands independently, or another student or anything like that.
okay.
This is important again for safety and security. It also is important to have a pretty explicit policy for those of you that have sat on the other side of discipline. When we talk about an expulsion hearing, for example, when someone has an inappropriate item in school, this backs up your school administrator in maintaining safety and security, that they may have had to ask a child to show them the contents of their backpack or look in their locker or what's in your pocket. And so you really want to make sure to have an explicit policy that lets people know that in order to maintain safety and security, we may need to do this if there is reasonable suspicion.
Kelly, I agree with your recommendation about the alternate language. I feel like if we've gotten to that point, then we probably need law enforcement there.
Agreed. I will just-
Any objections from anyone on the committee?
We're not doing strip searches.
You would have objections from your administrators, I will tell you that. You're right. If we are here, we're calling in some outside officials to support us with this.
So I just want to make sure that, Sherry, that you are satisfied with that language in the first sentence when you asked about the district official. Would you be more comfortable if it said the district's administrative official?
Well, I just wanted to clarify it for myself. Yes, because I just didn't know if that meant any authoritative figure, or when you say district, that would be a police officer, right? Or somebody like that, right?
But
So,
if you include that
Administrative.
administrative, it sounds better, though.
yes, okay.
Definitely sounds better.
To me, if you
More
have the
specific-
question
more
reading it, we
specific.
want to make it crystal clear to others. I would recommend that we add it in. It does not change the essence of it. It just provides further clarification.
Okay,
Mhm.
I needed clarification, so yes.
Kelly, a little further down, underneath the section on desks and school lockers, right at the top of that next page, it says use of drug detection dogs and metal detectors or similar detective devices may be used only on the express authorization of the
We have to make a choice
or
here.
superintendent. I would suggest superintendent in this case. Is that in agreement with other members of the committee?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Not something we've done often. I can think of one time in my history in the district that we've done this.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I do think it's important to reserve the right if you felt the need to do it at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
On
And
the
if
heels
we
of that,
yeah.
go ahead,
Go
Juanita.
ahead. And if we can just be consistent, the next sentence down, district administrative officials.
Kelly, I noted that there's a regulation that's attached to the previous incarnation of
Mhm.
this policy. Does that regulation go away when we pass a new like an updated policy like this, or does it stay?
It stays. We can update and revise regulations, but unless we notify you that we intend to remove it, any regulations attached would be would go with them.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions from the committee about this? Any questions from non-committee members? All right, seeing none, I look for a motion to be made to recommend updated CABE policy 5145.12, search and seizure, to the board for a first read.
motion.
All right, thank you, Sherry. May I have a second on that, please?
Second,
Second,
Let me give that one to Juanita. Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion so carries. All right, Kelly, let's tee up that last one.
The last one, I'm actually going to make a request. This is policy 5142, and it is student safety. I do think it's a pretty extensive policy to go through. We also got some recent feedback in which we want to make 1 or 2 recommended revisions. So if the committee would be okay with it, I'd like to pause this one and postpone it as the first one in our next policy meeting in March.
Are folks amenable to that? I certainly am.
Yes. Yes.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I have a motion to table that policy, please? To table updated CABE policy 5142, student safety.
Motion.
Thank you,
Second.
Sherry. Thank you, Minnie.
Thank you.
All
If I
those in
could
favor?
go.
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Thank you. Sorry about that,
Sorry,
Kelly.
I apologize. I just wanted to let you know, we are getting towards the very end of the 5,000 series, which was a huge feat. It's one of our largest series. I think we're going to need another next meeting and the following one, and then we can safely be through the 5,000 series. The next series after that is the other equally long policy series, which is all your student policies more related to curriculum and instruction and programming for kids. So I would expect that we would be able to start that and then continue on that in the fall. And the only other one that we have left after this comprehensive policy audit that we went through everything is some of our financial policies that we need to also come back to. We've done some updates and some of the critical things that we've needed to do, but a comprehensive review of those. So good news is we're winding the corner with the 5,000. The 6,000 series will be very similar. And then what we will do is then circle back to the remainder of the finance policies. And then this full committee has went through all the policies since the audit in, I think it was 2019.
Oh, nice.
Juanita?
Kelly, do we have any mandated policies that
So
we
we-
need to do
yep.
before the end of the school year that might go into effect?
Like we did last June. No, there is nothing on my radar currently. Now, that said, the legislative session is opening, so we will be very mindful to see if there are any tweaks or changes that need to be put in place. But there is no policy that I'm aware of to date that we have to get in before the end of the year. If that does come to be, what I would just do is ask that we address that policy first and then continue on with any remaining whatever series we're in at that point in time.
Thank you.
I just want to ask a real question. Dr. Casimiro, I think you're probably the right person for this. As far as the dress code policy, which would probably fall under that series 6,000 students, do you know sort of where we are in that? Are we going to be looking at something before the end of the year, or was that something we might expect to do beginning of next year?
So we want to implement by next year. I'd love to, heading into this, our goal was to get something out before for the spring and the winter thaw. So we usually see some interesting things in this heading into summer. We'd like to try to curtail. Kelly and I are working together on this. We're implementing a lot of things right now. We've got school climate policy. There's all kinds of things happening. So we're trying to fit it into the right window, not to overtax all the same stakeholder groups that we're already tapping right now for many different other projects. So we talked about starting first with a survey just to get people's understanding of what they believe, how that our dress code policy is currently, if our dress code policy is currently, meeting our needs, what recommendations they would have to change. And then we would bring that back as sort of a cursory review to jumpstart the conversation. It's really more about, I think for us, is clarifying newer terms, updating the dress code in terms of code of conduct, which is more regs, but then also what is it in the policy that has prevented people from fully enforcing it? Where are the weak points that need clarification or any language that seems to be a barrier for people not wanting to, get their hands dirty on it because it's been a little bit of a sticky wicket for some. So it's really about clarifying that, but I need all the right people at the table, and we are running into some, I would say, a log jam of initiatives. So we definitely are getting to it. We're getting closer, but I would say probably by, March, we probably have that teed up and ready to go, and then spend some time on that, get through some more of the series, and then hopefully implement something so that it's well communicated before school ends, so that it informs shopping, school shopping, and all of those things heading into the fall.
Thank you for the update. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Any other questions from our committee before we look to adjourn?
Just
Kate,
go ahead,
sorry.
Juanita.
Is it okay if I just have make an announcement about a webinar for tomorrow?
Go
Okay,
ahead.
there is an upcoming governor's budget webinar sponsored by CABE tomorrow at 12, from 12 to 1:15, where they will be reviewing what the governor is submitting and looking very carefully of how it's going to affect us in education and ways that we may be able to use our advocacy skills.
Thank you, Juanita. And I will just add that even if you can't attend live as that webinar is happening, if you register for it now, CABE often sends out a link afterwards so that you can
Correct.
access the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Juanita.
All right. If I don't see any other questions, I will look for a motion to adjourn, please. Nobody wants to go, huh?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Juanita. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Thank you, Minnie. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Thank you all for being here.